Glad that you're still here with us on the Morning Express, and welcoming from the international news there, featuring Hillary Clinton, according to Sophia. But now coming up to the lifestyle session, which is the final part of this show this morning. And on Mondays, we feature inspirational stories or social issues. And by the way, if you have an inspirational story, would love to hear from you. Send me a tweet, maybe with your number, your email address. We'll write to you, and you can let us know what your inspirational story is, and we can feature you right here on the Morning Express. I think Sophia's influence is getting on me. Yeah, this morning we have a story of one lady. Maybe you've read her story in the newspapers. Possibly you saw it featured on KTN this Saturday, but it is one worth repeating. It is none other than Dr. Stellah Bosire Otieno, and hers is a story of inspiration from the doldrums of poverty and abuse. She has certainly come a long way, and I'm not going to tell you her story because she's here herself. And thank you for joining us, Dr. Stellah.
Thank you.
And thank you for coming. Now, your story, of course, was started off in the newspapers, but for the benefit of those who maybe have not read it or seen it, tell me a little bit about yourself.
I was born and raised in the slums of Kibera, a place called Katwekera. Just a background of Kibera, it's the largest slum in Eastern Central Africa with now over 1 million inhabitants. I was raised by a mother, a very intelligent, streetwise mother, who unfortunately happened to have a mental condition. And because of having a mental condition, we were exposed to a lot of atrocities. Considering the environment that you grew up in is also a slum area. One of the things I encountered very early, my age, is I was sexually abused by a relative who had just come visiting, and unfortunately he did us to also my mom and my other family members. It's also at this particular point I was in primary school, and because of the difficulties, I never used to be a consistent student. Most of the times I'd be out of school. Life became really tough at one particular moment. I remember when we were in class 5 that it forced us to go to the streets, because now my mom had a very difficult bout. She had depression and schizophrenia, and the schizophrenia was strong at this particular time. And I remember that we could not get food, because the days she was stable, she would do menial jobs, casual jobs, wash people's clothes, sell githeri here and there in the construction industry for the workers, and then she'd be able to sort us out. But it became really hard, so we had to go to the streets. And one particular incident for me that I will always carry on is the fact that the difficulties that street children encounter, because I was there for quite some time. And one of the things, especially for a young female, I remember I was gang raped by about 4 men, and because of all this, I really became a hardcore, by best definition of it. I started doing drugs very early at class 5, just at that particular time.
Maybe before we go to the gang rape and the drugs and all that, how many were you in your family?
We are 5. We are 5 in my family, yes. Okay. Yes. And we all were in the streets. Okay, and yes.
Where was your father? You mentioned that you were brought up by your intelligent mother.
My intelligent mother.
Yes.
My father, unfortunately, chose another lifestyle. I will choose not to discuss him at this particular time.
Okay,
yes.
But did you know him?
Yes, I did. Only that I would just have to mention that my father was an alcoholic. Yes, and promiscuity also was very big in his life.
Was he within the home? Was he staying at home?
No, not at that particular time.
So he was an absent father. Okay.
Yes.
And what number are you in terms of?
I'm the second born. I'm the second born in my family. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. And so you were brought up in the streets with your siblings. Did you live together in the same house, or did you all just hustle on your own?
No, most of the time we would hustle on our own, because depending on where you would be able to get food, scavenge for food and all that. And of course in the streets there are also gangs. So where it is that you really comfortably fit in, that's where you would find yourself with the friends that you would make in the street. Okay.
Now, from your experience, having been brought up in one of the biggest slums in Africa,
yes.
What happens in there? From your experience, what's it? Give me like a day-to-day activity of what happens in there.
I'll tell you this. I mean, being a slum area, poverty, of course, is top in the list.
Right.
That has pushed people to such an environment. And because of this, there are a lot of people who've despaired in life. There are a lot of people who've taken alternative means of making a livelihood. For women, for instance, most of them have gone into prostitution.
Within the slum?
Within the slum. And this prostitution is not there 1,000 shillings, okay? It's the 200, it's the nunulia unga, it's the please pay for my rent, okay, which is about 600. Most of the houses there go for about 600 shillings, and that is one of the biggest issues. One of the biggest issues there. Another issue is health. I mean, no one would. How would I spend money to be treated in a proper hospital where I am sleeping hungry? Okay, I'd rather channel that money. So people are going into other alternative modes of treatment. Most of them believe in of course, issues of witch doctors, issues of traditional healers, and we've lost a lot of people because of this. Another important thing is that because of the environment and because a lot of people who are there are not, one, well knowledgeable in terms of issues of rights, they're not knowledgeable in terms of child protection issues. There's a lot of rape, there's a lot of sexual abuse going on there in the street, and of course drugs, okay? And drugs are very cheap, okay? Especially marijuana, okay? A joint is sold at 10 shillings, 5 shillings, and a lot of children are indulging in this at a very early age. Remember also issues of illicit brew, okay? We have changa, we have busa, and the women who perhaps have started that as a business, okay, make their homes, they introduce their children, are introduced very early into this kind of lives.
Okay. Tell me about your school.
My school. I went to Kibera Primary School initially. It's a school in Kibera, Karanja. I was there from class 1 to class 5, but I was expelled. My teachers discovered I was on drugs and I was selling drugs, because half the time I actually go to school and I'm high, and I was a very violent child. I was actually a social delinquent. Knowing for me that was my way of covering up the issues that I was going through. None of my teachers knew I actually was struggling with issues of food, issues of my mother being sick. None of them knew. And as a child, a child will always get a different channel to be able to exhibit all these factors. Yes.
Okay. And how did you access these drugs, given that your mom was also not earning, a lot? How did you manage to get money to buy the drugs?
The first time you get introduced into the smoking, and then because of a lot of people who smoke, and you tell the person, the senior peddler, that I can be able to sell if you give me a cut for me. So they introduce you. These are people you've lived in the community. These are people who are known in the community, and everyone knows this is the business that they do. So what do? You start becoming a peddler. Okay. And for a child, people would hardly actually even think about you as a peddler, because most people think about the elderly people in terms of gender, the male sex. And for a child, that's a very good cover-up, and it's a booming business.
Okay. And for you, did it start as something you wanted to do because you admired it, or was it something that you looked at as a form of income, now getting into the drug abuse? And maybe tell me about your first time, your first experience, before you got addicted. Because even before you become a drug addict, is that first experience where it's wrong, or it's dangerous to some degree, but you still want to do it. What was your incentive?
The first time I had access to marijuana specifically was ganja tea. We call it ganja tea in Islam. Basically what you do is that the leaves and the seeds of the marijuana, you actually boil them and make tea.
Wow.
So the tea was really delicious, and it made me high. And at that particular point, the euphoria, I forgot I had problems from home. I forgot about the issues of sexual abuse. At that particular point, I was in heaven. And then it became a lifestyle for me. Slowly by slowly, when people had tea, I had ganja tea. Okay, we'd even sit in we'd have ganja sessions where the peddler would actually, the mabakshishi, okay, the remnants of the real deal, would be able to boil them and then share with us. And it's at that particular point that now I said, oh, I can take ganja tea, I can generate to this. But for me, that was a way of looking for an alternative way not to be sad, because I had a lot of sadness around me. Yes.
Okay. And you talked about your mom being unwell.
Yes.
Yet she was still intelligent. Tell me about that.
I find my mom to be one of the strongest people so far I have met in my life, because even in mental disease, as a doctor right now, I understand very well, there are times where they're stable and then there are times where they're unstable. In her stable moments, my mom would sit down and be with me and tell me, it's important for you to get an education. I actually remember I taught my mom how to write. Okay, she never knew how to write, and I had to teach her how to write her name. And she'll really emphasize on the importance of education. She's really emphasized on the importance of chastity, okay? Things that perhaps were not really mentioned in that setup, because most parents would not be able to discuss these issues. They had bigger things in their plate than issues of chastity and education to consider. Yes.
Okay. And her mental illness, what was she suffering from?
My mom had schizophrenia, okay, and it's actually alternating between schizophrenia and depression. The schizophrenia for me was my worry, my biggest worry, because there are times she'll just wake up and start talking to herself. I remember when I was young, there are times she converted our single room into her bathroom and her toilet, and if you as a child try to remove the remnants, the waste, she would really get very violent. Okay, so for us we had to leave it as it is until she comes out of it, and then she cleans it up. Okay, so those are the things that, and sometimes she would even go to a point of walking naked. Yeah, because
and at that point, did you know she was mentally ill?
No, I didn't know she was mentally ill.
How old were you?
I was about 10 years.
Okay, and what was going on through your mind, given that this is your mom?
Yeah.
You know, using the sitting room as a toilet and also walking naked sometimes.
It was very abnormal for me as a child, because I saw the other mothers were not doing that. Why is it that my mom was doing that? And of course, the neighbors would start saying, "Huyo mama wazimu, huyo mama wazimu." So that became my first point of contact to know, okay, my mom is not mentally stable, because this is what people, there's something wrong. This is what people are saying. Huyo mama ni wazimu.
Okay. So you watched all this happen. Did that in any way get you depressed, or did that inspire? What effect did it have on you?
The only thing I picked from that moment is that in my heart, I wished one day I could be in a position to sort her out, to sort her mental condition. Of course, the only way I could do that is perhaps go to school, have a degree, do well first in high school, and then have a degree, and then become a doctor. For me, it was about medicine right from the first age. It was about medicine and sorting my mom out. Yes.
So that inspired you to now want to become a doctor?
That actually played a very big role for me in pushing me despite everything that was happening around me. The few times I'd go to school, I actually concentrate, because at the back of my mind, that would be the only thing I held on to, saying that, okay, I don't care about money, but perhaps if I got this education, my mom would get well.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. You talked about the gang rape, and we'll come to that. But let's talk about the sexual abuse from your relative.
Yes.
And the reason why I bring this up now is because I know it's happening in many families.
Yes.
And there are very many children. There are both boys and girls who really do not know what to do, don't know how to say it. We've also got the other side of the coin, where they've actually approached their trust, whoever it is, whether it's their guardian or their parent, to tell them that this is happening, because normally it happens from somebody who's very close to you.
Very true.
And secondly, there is that aspect of a child coming to you and telling you that they're being abused, but you don't believe. You think, no, you're exaggerating, or you're making this up. Tell me about your experience. How did it happen? What did your relative tell you? How did you keep, yourself not from saying?
One of the things that sexual abusers take advantage, especially in children, is they instill fear. Fear plays a great role. For me, he threatened to kill my mom, and that she was my world. I couldn't let that happen. I couldn't let him take away my mom. And this was actually his ticket to me being silent. But one of the things I've realized, even as I've come out, I've shared my story, and even initially as I was talking to a lot of children and a lot of women, is that there's some state of hopelessness in the society. The people think that if you're raped, then you go to the police, what's going to happen next? I think what we need, there's a disconnect between where we start talking, where we start approaching the issue of who do we go to? We have a lot of organizations, we have gender-based violence organizations that are doing a lot of counseling, but we don't have a process where, if I went to the police and reported the issue out, from the police, I know the police would be able to take me to an organization that would pick up the counseling, perhaps talk to a law firm, or not necessarily law firm, a law organization like FIDA that will attach me to a lawyer, because for instance, for me, it's a person I knew, okay? Then they would be able to pick it up and go the judicial way. But one of the things I've realized the disconnect comes in is that most people will flood in at that particular point, give attention to that child at that particular point, then the moment when that child actually needs the most attention is post, when things have calmed down. Because it's at this time that they sit alone, they think, and they start feeling, oh, I'm not worth living, or this has happened to me, I don't even want to go to school, and they start exhibiting extensive traits. I'll tell you an experience that I had. One of the children I'm walking in this journey with, is that she was going to school and she was raped in the morning. And these are people, she found herself in Nairobi Women's Hospital, and these are people she did not know. And after she was taken to hospital, we were asking the question, what next? Where does she go? Who will handle her? So a colleague of mine called Angeline Siparo and I had to take up the child, take to our homes, had to take her through counseling. We brought counselors to her, and they walked her through the whole journey. But our system is not so straightforward in terms of the protocols that are supposed to be followed when this happens. I think that's one of the things that we also need to, as a government and also as organizations that are concerned about this issue, that we really need to have proper channels. We really need to know that from this step we are moving to this step, who is doing the follow-up, especially in terms of psychosocial follow-up to these children to the end, so that we don't lose them, because what happens, we lose them. They're not like Stellah, perhaps she'll be picked or she'll come into her right senses. Some of them actually get into drugs and alcohol and even prostitution, because especially for a woman, when you take that which defines her as a child, she loses that. Okay, and it's important for us to address the issue of that it's not lost. We can still start over, and everything can go as you had planned or as you dreamt.
Okay, what would you say to parents who their child exhibits, and what is it that they would exhibit if this was happening? Because you mentioned one of the things that keeps it quiet is the fear.
The fear.
So they'll not come and talk about it. They'll probably not say it to anyone. But as a parent, maybe there's certain changes that one can notice and pick up, maybe just to get that conversation going.
One of the things that I'd advise parents is, if there is perhaps a male, let me take an example of a male relative where this child used to be very comfortable around, but now you're seeing they are retracting, they're closing themselves, they're not talking. You can see fear on their faces. If perhaps you tell them, please pass water or please give them this, and the child they're even trembling when they're going towards that relative. Please sit down with that child. Find out what it is that happened, because at that particular point they cannot express themselves. They have been threatened. Remember, this is the biggest tool that the abusers use. They threaten these children. So talk to them and find out what it is that they are going through. If that's not possible, we have counselors around. We also have psychiatrists, actually pediatric psychiatrists. It's very easy for them to pick up such an issue and actually to take the child through treatment. Yes, and all these fortunately available even in government hospitals.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Yes, you're continuing with the story, and you're telling us about how you went through your school, and at some point I think you were also was it suspended or expelled?
Actually, that's a first school, Kibera Primary. Then I was expelled. Went out, stayed for some time. Then I went back. I was transferred to Joseph Kangede Primary School by Goodwill, and in Joseph Kangede, I still had. Remember, I was already now addicted. Okay, and for me, I had gained a momentum in terms of now as a very good, as an expensive peddler. Okay, I even became
expensive
a supplier.
Here means
meaning I became the source.
Okay.
Okay, like if you have a cartel, there's a mafia, then these other guys, then these other guys who pick from them. So for me, I became the central area where other people would be able to pick their drugs from.
You're almost a distributor.
I was actually a distributor,
Right.
yes, and I took this to my next school, Joseph Kangede Primary School, and I hid it a lot in terms of, for me, when I was in class, I would concentrate. And I'd actually do well, very well in my exams. So I hid it behind the academics, and my teachers did not pick until I started now becoming very violent. I remember I used to organize pseudo wrestling matches where people would fight and they'd pay, other students would pay to watch. And some of these things came to the attention of my teachers, and now they started investigating me, the head teacher and the deputy head teacher. And one day in the morning, I walk in just after registering for pre-walk, and I'm told, we are going to the office by the deputy head teacher, and told me to strip. And I had my uniform, and inside I had like 3 layers of shorts. Telling me, every cloth you remove, please remove your pockets out. And in my head, I'm thinking I have like 200 shots I had matchsticks, the matchboxes. I'd arranged them in stacks of 10. I'm thinking,
ready for sale.
Ready for sale. This is it. Oh well, I was caught that day, and an expulsion letter was written to
This
my
is
school.
not Joseph Kangede.
Joseph Kangede, yes. I was expelled, and I was not to sit for the exam until one of the teachers intervened and said, there must be something wrong. This girl cannot be this bright. There must be other issues that perhaps we're not will not come to our attention. And then when they investigated, they actually found that my mom had a mental disease. We had a very dysfunctional family. There was no proper guidance in terms of parental care. And it's then that they actually sent word to me. They said, we're not going to fully expel you. We're going to give you a chance to come and sit for your
So this was
KCPE.
because of a teacher?
Yes.
Who had some hope in you because of your performance?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So they said they'll not expel
She's
you.
called Mrs. Ochieng. I'll never forget her.
Okay.
Yeah, she's currently the deputy head teacher in Kibera Primary School. Yes. So they sent word through, of course, my schoolmates and said, oh, if you want, you can go back. They'll give you a chance to sit for KCPE. But that time I had actually lost hope. I had despaired completely. I had thought, but this was my last stream. But here it is, it has been cut. Why do I leave? Why do I need to really even try any harder? And now I went into full-blown alcohol and the drugs. And I was actually even trying what we call tap in the streets, which is Valium for me as a medical doctor. And now that took me to...
What is that?
Valium is a benzodiazepine, okay?
In English?
In English, it's a sedative. It's a drug which is a sedative. And it also brings some euphoric relaxation effect, okay? It's one of the drugs sometimes you also prescribe in people who have anxiety attack. So that calmness that it gives you a certain calmness that you forget where you're from, you forget the problems that you face. And it's during this time that I also started living with a certain gang of girls. Of course, in the whole, you would walk to Katwekera, you say, Stella, anakuambia, huyo hata tunangoja kufe, huyo hata si mtoto unaweza hesabu.
You are known in the area.
I was known in the area, and I was bad news. I was very bad news. I was violent. I would check things that did not belong to me. I would harass other children. Unatuma mtoto kwa duka, I'm the one who would actually snatch away the change. Nataliambia mama yako anikujie, because I didn't have direction. I had actually gotten to that point where I cared less what happened to me. And towards the end of the year, one of my housemates started nudging me, and she was telling me, I have a KCPE certificate, a class 8 certificate. What do you have to show? Why don't you go and see? And I kept telling her, what is the purpose? What is the reason? You see, at the back of my mind, I remember my dream of being a doctor. I remember my passion of being able to sort my mom out. But then it was clouded with everything that had happened. Every particular, like for example, I found school to be my safe area, and now I didn't have school anymore. I was in the streets. I was most of the time in the local drinking joints. And I told her I don't think it's a good idea, and she kept insisting. Told me, I'll give you fare. Every day I'll make breakfast for you.
This is a colleague of yours?
No, it's one of the girls we lived in the same house. Yeah, in the gang. And she told me, I'll do everything. So you can imagine the day for rehearsal, she woke up and made me 6 eggs. And told me,
ready for the exam.
Ready for the exam. And I told her I can't. And she made me 6 eggs and about 4 mandazis, and I went. And I did the rehearsal. For me, it was very distinct because it had been made clear that I'll not sit for the exams with the rest of the students. And even as we started KCPE, I was put in a class alone with an AP with an AK-47 watching over me, all alone. Wow. Yes. And I did my exams. And one of the challenges I still remember now is that Nancy had gone ahead and bought me a mathematical set, only that she did not buy me a sharpener. So what did I have to do? I sharpened my pencil with my teeth, and then I put it on the floor, okay? There's a way we used to do that in primary. You sharpen it on the floor, to sharpen it well. And then I did my geometry. Luckily enough, in maths, I had an A, okay? So after I did my KCPE, that was it for me. I didn't care what happened next. She still went ahead. You know that these people got places in your life that they keep nudging you, they'll keep pushing you to your limits, and you're thinking, what is your problem? And for me, at that particular point, it was Nancy. So results are out, and she's telling me, it has been announced. Why don't you go see what you've gotten? I'm telling her, I don't think I really want to go because I know I've failed. And she told me, no, let's go. She actually walked me to Joseph Kangede. I remember the first teacher I met was the deputy who remember the story of him asking me to strip. He shook my hand and told me, congratulations, well done. So I'm thinking, okay, I think he must have confused me with somebody else. So I went, I was index 2 by the time I was leaving. So I looked up, I saw index 2, I saw, 516 over 700. I high-fived Nancy and said, you know what, let's go party. Because I knew with the state I was in, there was no hope for me to go to high school. I remember there was this particular teacher who had a soft spot for me. And when that came, she was really excited, and she told the rest, no, this girl, we must push her. This girl, we must push her. Despite everything that is happening, I think for us, we must also bring her back to the right tangent for us, for her to take into, to sharpen her life. And they looked for me in Katwekera, called me and told me, you're going to go to high school. Your letter for State House is here. And I told them, who's going to pay my fees? who's going to take care of me? You know, I had, and I was being I was being pessimistic at that particular moment, because I didn't feel there was any worth in them investing in me, considering I was written off basically. Luckily for me, I was able to join State House. Half of my first term school fees was paid. The only amount I ever paid was that. I think it was about 7,500.
How did you get the rest of the amount done?
I didn't get the rest of the amount done. This takes me to about form 2 or form 1 third term. They kept chasing me home to bring school fees, and I told them I'll never come back with money. So one day I take my 2 pairs of a pair of skirts, and I stuck all my items in a paper bag, and I go to the principal and I tell her, look here, Mrs. Ndege, even if you chase me to the ends of this world, I'll never come with school fees. You just do me a deal, let me go out, I'll work. Because by then I had gotten direction. By then I had actually seen there's actually hope. I was getting focused, and I realized there are people who are being dropped by big vehicles in school. Wow. I'm the only one who's walked to school. I'm the only one whose locker only has 2 shirts and a skirt and some tumba socks. And I'm thinking there's another life. There's another life outside there that I need to work towards. So when I told her this, she asked me about my background, and I told her, and I was very lucky that I was put on PTA, and any money, bursaries that came into the school, my school fees would be taken away from that.
Okay.
Yes.
So you now managed to go through your school.
I managed to go through.
Just like that.
Yes.
That was sorted out.
Yes.
And at this point, were you still struggling with drugs? Or
I was struggling very hard with drugs. I remember in the first term, I had a lot of withdrawal symptoms, severe. I'd get migraines, I'd start shaking, I'd start even having hallucinations, because I was used to this calming, this high effect. And I'd wake up in the morning and I'd tell myself, I'm going to leave school, I'm going to look for the drugs. But then I asked myself this other question, that this is heaven for you. I'm in an environment where I'm having 3 meals in a day. I'm in an environment where books are provided for me free. I have teachers. I have access to teachers. I have a place to sleep. Why is it that I want to squander this opportunity? So I started fighting it. I never ever told a soul, as long as I struggled with it. And that's one of the things that for drug abusers, they have to really come out. You have to share as a means of coming out.
So you didn't go for any rehab or anything like that?
I did not attend any rehab.
It was mental power.
It was mental power. I remember waking up. Sometimes I'd wake up at 3 a.m. and stand in the shower. That cold water, or sleep on the slabs, because that coldness would be able to shift my concentration from the urge to want to smoke into the coldness. And slowly I walked out, and then I developed this mental strength that I can do it, and I can do it. I will never smoke again, I will never drink again. And I kept encouraging myself. You see, I put positive thoughts in my mind, and slowly I walked out. I don't even remember the last time I ever had withdrawal symptoms. Yes.
Okay, now let's talk about the gang rape, because the other day, not too long ago, we were talking about overcoming a trauma.
Yes. And
I'm sure that must have been a very traumatic experience for you. First of all, what happened and how did you overcome that?
We were next to Ngong Forest in Langata. As we were walking, we were 2 girls. One of my friends ran away, and I felt 3 men hold me. Okay, and you know the way you have a mental picture of someone. There's the person who pinned me down until today. I still have their face. I still have that mental picture. And the other ones took their turns, and then they left me there. And I woke up and I was sore, and I was very bitter, and I was angry, and I hated everyone in the world. I just hated everyone in the world. And of course, for me, what did I do? I went into my ganja. Okay, I went smoking, and for me, I said, okay, looks like my fate is in this. This is just my lot. This is what every man who sees me sees. Let it be. But then I actually depressed the thoughts. Then as I was being exposed to this environment outside here, as when I went to high school, all these thoughts started coming back. We're going to class, we're being taught about sexual abuse, and I'm thinking, why did it have to happen to me? So it started taking a toll on me slowly by slowly.
Maybe because of time. How did you overcome it? How did you actually now get over it?
One of the things I did is I spoke out. Okay, for me, I identified a friend. One day I sat with a friend, I told her, please, I just want you to sit there and listen to me. That was in high school. And she listened to me. And post high school, for me, I looked for a counselor. Okay, a psychiatrist called Dr. Nyanja. And I remember I would call her in the middle of the night and tell her, I think they're coming for me. They're going to hold me down. Please come pick me. And she would pick me from school, the University of Nairobi School of Medicine, and take me to her house, and she walked with me through this. Throughout.
Okay.
And until this point, it doesn't affect me anymore.
Okay.
And I marched out.
How did you become a doctor? All this, is when we picture it, it's all very grim and very negative energy. How did you end up becoming a doctor?
After high school, remember I went back to the same environment. And for me, there were two options. Either I become a prostitute or start peddling drugs. And peddling drugs became uneasy. And I even started a bit. But then, remember the conviction I'd had, the hard work I had after I was in school. I thought this is not the right way. What do I want to do? I went looking for a formal job. So I went looking for a job as a house girl. And you saw this whole process of the lady who had taken me in. I started teaching her children to do maths, and they became really well. By the time she was realizing that I was actually a very bright girl, I had stayed with her for 8 months. I remember her sucking me and telling me, I cannot have you in my life. I cannot have you in my house. This is not acceptable. Okay, you're supposed to be here, but at this particular point you're here, and I'm not going to be the one to put you in this. She
felt being a house girl was too low.
Was too low for me, and I really loved that, because also that was an eye opener for me. Then for her, she worked in a non-governmental organization, so she connected me to a certain journalist who'd come from Italy. She's called Sylvia Resta, and she was doing a research in terms of HIV poverty in the slum. And for me, she told me, you're eloquent in English, you know the slum back to back, all the way from Kianda 42 to the ends of Line Saba. I know all the villagers, I know all the village elders. You happen to be really active in terms of involvement in the activities there. Could you kindly take this lady as she's doing her documentary? I said, yeah. And she told me, for me, that was not the big issue. The big issue was being paid 1,000 shillings per day, and I was being bought for lunch, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. That was it. So I went in with the mentality of a job, and this lady, the journalist, discovered that no, you're something about you that I really need to also capture on camera. So she told me, let me hear your story. So she captured my story, and as an addition to the documentary, it was aired on the national television of Italy, and they got overwhelming support, and people wanted to give me money. And I remember telling her, I don't even want a single cent. If you're sending me money, I'm going to sort all these women who they're in stage 4 HIV, they have no means of earning a living. So actually, the few people who I received money from, I went back and I did that to these families. So for me, it was an issue of, what do you want to do? And I told her, since I was young, and because of the background of my mother's mental disease and the environment where I grew up, health was very wanting. I'd really love to be a doctor. And someone introduced me to the Rita Levi Montalcini Foundation, and I was told, gamble, apply. If you're taking, that's it. I did apply. It's a very competitive scholarship. They educate 5 or 10 about in the whole of Africa, women in science, and I was taken in. And for me, that was joy. That was everything. And I remember applying for a program at the University of Nairobi to study medicine.
Okay.
Yes.
Did you end up now taking care of your mom?
Yes, I did. Unfortunately, because of this mental illness and also people taking advantage of her sometimes, my mom contracted HIV and AIDS. By the time I was in 3rd year, my mom was in stage 4. By the time I'm starting on medication, because when we discovered starting on medication, thank God for my senior colleagues in Kenyatta who were able to take her through the treatment. The mental disease weighed heavily, on her. So she could not be able to take her medication as regularly, and she went down and she passed on in 2011.
Sorry about
due to
that.
HIV-related complications.
Okay. And would you attribute to where you are today to luck, or is it hard work? What would you say has brought you this far?
I think one of the things for me, I realized that I was out of the norm. As a social delinquent. Nasikia nilikuwa Kibera, nilikuwa naambiwa huyo tunangoja afe. Huyo amepotea kabisa. Even the elder right now actually said those words to Najma Ismail. These one of those children we had written off. We are just waiting to be told she's been shot, she's died. Okay, she's been caught by the police. That was one. When I realized that, for me, this is not the norm. What is the norm? The norm is for me as a woman, as a girl, to respect myself. The norm is for me, where do I want to? I want to be a doctor. How do I want to get there? Okay, I need to work hard. Okay, there are things that have been done to me and I'm so bitter. What do I need to do? I need to let go. Because the more I hold on to them, the more they're also weighing back. They're also pulling me back into that particular time. And I'm never going to grow. And then I started having these positive thoughts in my mind. And this, I love this song. I know I can be what I want to be if I work hard in it. And then for me, it's not just about working hard. It's about working smart. So I started involving myself concentrating more, paying attention to my books, paying attention to my environment. And I realized, for me, I am in a better place, but there are many people who are still there. What is it that I can do as part of my healing, as part of my struggle in terms of breakthrough? I started taking these people and I'd share with them my story. I talk to them, tell them I've been in worse. Think you've done drugs? I've done drugs. You think this has happened to you? This has happened to me worse.
I guess as we wind up, did you wave goodbye to Kibera, or do you still go back? And is there something you're doing towards?
Actively, we're in the process. I'm in the process of registering an ungovernmental organization called Faraja Kenya. And even as I am doing that, the whole of this story being on the national platform has really brought a lot of correspondence. My email is jammed up. I am getting, for my Facebook, people are talking to me, people are giving up, people want to commit suicide. Women have, one of the grandmothers I'm actually dealing with is that her grandchild had been abused very young in an alcoholic environment, and I'm working with them through. So Faraja Kenya, one of the things that it deals with is that, how to be that connection, okay? We have a lot of people doing a lot of things for these children, but there's no continuity. We want to be that connection. Number two, there's a street healing program that I am doing. In the whole of my, since I graduated, I've been working with a backpack with drugs, okay? And I'm treating street children on the way. So I have been doing this as an individual, and now people are feeling, why do you have to do it as an individual? Why don't we do it on a national platform? Because the ailments, the common ailments the street families and children are going through, most of them are treatable. The infectious conditions, the wounds they have, they can be sorted, okay? All we need to do is just pay a little attention to them. And if for me, my ministry is to be able to be part and parcel of the healing program, that for me is my strength. So that's one of the things that I'm really actively involved in right now. And of course, mentorship. I've been doing a lot of schools have been inviting me in informal areas, also in the other side, because the challenges are different. In the slum, people are thinking, see, we are doomed. In the other side of the society, people are struggling with drug abuse, okay? So it still cuts across. So I accept a lot of invitations, as long as it's going to make a child, as long as it's going to make a woman know that I don't have to, I don't have to live, because the way I live right now, it's not defined by my past.
Right.
As long as that mentality is out there, for me, that's a win-win situation.
All right. Thank you so much, Dr. Stellah Wairimo,
Yes.
for your inspiring story, and even agreeing to just come and, talk about your life and hopefully inspire somebody else who might be in the same position and know that not all is lost. And I'd like to bring in Sophia right here. Sophia, what do you think of the story?
Amazing stuff. And Stella, just to thank you again for coming and for throughout just talking about your story and what you've been through, because it is sometimes, I guess God allows for some things to happen and for us to go through them, so that then we can be that beacon of hope.
Yes.
That even in our darkest of moments, that is not the end of it all. There still is hope. There still can be a different story to be told. There's still another chapter, and you epitomize that. And so we applaud you and we cheer you on. Keep doing the great work.
Thank you.
All right.